How can I leave her? Where would I start? Let man's petty nations tear themselves apart. My land's only border lies around my heart. Welcome to the Voice of Reason, and we should be proud every day of the United States of America and nationalism. The left has made it out to be a bad word thanks to the globalist, neocon, neoliberal League of Shadows that wants to perpetuate this falsehood that somehow America is bad. But in the best of ways, and sadly in the worst of ways, this week we're reflecting upon the fact that Americans do come together, as our thoughts and prayers are with nearly 31 million Texans who embody the characteristic of what it means to be a citizen of this great country, with the Guadalupe River overflowing at such a rapid rate, a once-in-a-generation storm, and completely destroying a very famous camp, which shaped countless Americans, especially within the Christian community, known as Camp Mystic. In the sadness of all this, we find over 850 rescues. And although the search is still continuing, and although we've lost over 100 of the finest Americans really to have ever lived, in the prime of their lives, so many young children as well, we take solace and gratitude and know that God ultimately is in control and that he is with the brokenhearted. We know this from the Psalms. We know this from the Gospels. We know this from his own sacrifice on the cross. And it's worth sharing the stories of people like Dick Eastland, the beloved camp director and co-owner who was swept away in the hill country floods while trying to reach campers in danger. And his final act of devotion, really giving up his own life so others could ultimately live. So for generations, this gentleman, Mr. Dick Eastland, was the heart of Camp Mystic in Hunt, Texas. With over 100 lives lost in this disaster so far, and as of this recording on this Thursday evening, we could take solace in knowing a true hero will last forever, and his memory of bringing so many people not only to the faith, but encouraging those who get dropped off at camp during the summertime. I mean, that's the parents' worst fear, right? That maybe my kids won't get along at camp. Maybe they won't make friends. Maybe they'll be bullied. But you don't think that a natural disaster would take the lives of countless individuals. And we learned of stories such as two sisters, Blair and Brooke Harbor. They were found dead together while holding hands, locked together after the Kerr County storms. They were only 13 and 11, and they had rosaries in hand, and life is truly precious when you look at stories like this with, why, Lord, you might ask, will you take the most innocent, or is it even your fault in that process? We know that there are hardships, and as Gracie Hunt put it, of the Kansas City Chiefs, the owner's daughter, who also lost a loved one, a family member in these terrible storms, following Jesus does not spare us from pain, but it means we never face it alone. And that's the message for all of Texas, for all of America this week on the Voice of Reason, that we do not face it alone. We face it together as a Judeo-Christian nation, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Another girl of St. George Catholic Church from Louisiana, Lainey Landry, she's only 9 years old. One of the tragic stories from this, a life lost, cut too short in the flooding near Camp Mystic. Many in her family have been praying on behalf of all those who lost their lives. There will be more names. There will be more stories to come out over the course of the days. We know that President Trump we'll be visiting Texas as well to see just the devastation and how to move forward from all of it. As we know, the Coast Guard and state and local responders rescuing hundreds and hundreds of lives in the process. I mean, imagine having that job where water's rushing uncontrollably up over 30 feet in roughly half an hour. And then you're tasked with that rushing water over hours and hours and hours with flash flood warnings and watches in the area coming in the next days. And you go into the mucky water. You don't know what's in there, what could harm you, the water moccasins, the snakes, all the different kind of animals and debris, and you're just feeling around for bodies. And that's the leadership of Texas, that regardless of finding those lives or finding those lives lost, that everyone would be recovered for. So our thoughts and prayers are with the Lone Star State, good people, 31 million who live there, who really come together and embody the greatness of America. And that really brings me to the idea of why be so interested in politics. Here at the Voice of Reason, we are politics with a dash of culture and some Western charm. And we talk about the greatness of America because that's what we are. Back on November 5th, peacefully and patriotically, you put a new government into place that would be a constitutional government, one that responds and listens to what you want, the will of the people, as it was founded nearly 250 years ago in this golden jubilee, this year of celebration, which really kicked off last week with 4th of July celebrations. But you have scenarios, too, of a government that sometimes does not work for you. We saw what happened with the auto pen. And over the course of these celebrations, with a flood like this, and with the loss of personal life, you have congresswomen like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are putting together legislation and really standing and fighting for the American people when it comes to things like weather manipulation, like possible cloud seeding. And we'll learn more in these coming days, but as we mourn and continue that search, we have to ask the questions as to why certain things are happening, whether it is solely man-made or whether it's been a government that has covered up things. One of my biggest questions over the course of the last week with the Epstein files and the fact that it was somewhat surprising. President Trump saying in that cabinet meeting that why are we still talking about this with everything else going on? But then Attorney General Pam Bondi answering the question and seemingly the Department of Justice perhaps closing at least a major part of that case and questions as to where is that client list? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell still behind bars? It's interesting because Kash Patel at FBI, the director, and his deputy Dan Bongino speaking for years on this, wanting to find the list and bring the perpetrators to justice. You even have voices now out there saying that they know people on the list and that people are being protected, being shielded from what's going on there. But my question is, too, what about the former Attorney General, Merrick Garland? Where was he during all of this over the course of the last 4 years? President Trump's been cleaning up so many messes over the course of 6 months. So right now, where the Voice of Reason stands on all of this is we are with you, the American people. We want to get to the bottom of this. We know where MAGA stands on these crucial issues, especially when it comes to human trafficking. Think about this, with Camp Mystic losing these precious lives to a storm surge that most of us have never, ever seen. Now imagine losing over 300,000 children to trafficking, as the last administration, the Auto Pen administration, did. This administration working overtime with Border Patrol, ICE, local, state, and federal law enforcement to find these perpetrators and then find the children. They found many of them so that they could bring them back into society. Nothing more disgusting, nothing more saddening and sickening to think about children being taken advantage of in such a terrible way. So regardless of where all of this leads, we will be right here at the Voice of Reason with you to uncover all of it. And these are major stories that we'll be developing over the course of the rest of the year and perhaps years to come. Tonight on The Voice of Reason, very special guest, starting off with Jeannie Ives of the Prairie State of Illinois. You can catch her on Sunday nights, The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, tackling all the major issues, not only happening in her neck of the woods, but also nationally. And we'll toss that there now. And welcome to The Voice of Reason. Jeannie Ives, The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, which you can catch Sunday evenings. So much going on in Chicago with the illegal immigration. And it really seems strange because you have the federal government with ICE, with the Department of Homeland Security and others really enforcing the law. But then you have local officials in the great Prairie State of Illinois seeming to go another direction. Talk to us about what's happened recently.
Well, it appears that just today there was an ICE sort of action taken at the Puerto Rican Museum, the cultural center there. And a number of elected officials, including Delia Ramirez, who is from that Humboldt Park area, who herself, was an anchor baby for her mother who crossed illegally. She openly says that. She and a number of elected officials got on their high horse and had this press conference saying, deriding ICE for coming in and actually looking into this cultural museum and whether or not they have illegals and that they're harboring them. Now, the interesting thing that I think people should know is that my organization has been doing its own sort of Illinois Doge effort. And in doing this, we started to go through the budget. Well, this particular cultural museum gets over $2 million from the state taxpayers. And an affiliated museum, the Segundo Ruiz organization, they get over $2 million as well. So a number of these Hispanic, Puerto Rican, you name it, organizations are getting taxpayers' money to come in, and then all they're doing is essentially harboring illegals, teaching illegals how to evade ICE and whatnot. So actually, I'm pretty overjoyed that ICE did an operation here today.
And we saw something similar in California with the Diocese of San Bernardino, coming from the bishop's office, actually warning people how to evade ICE and actually to be able to get that dispensation for those who are Catholic to not even attend Sunday Mass to evade ICE just in case. I mean, it's really kind of incredible to see public and private institutions doing all they can to seemingly evade federal law enforcement and break the law.
Well, and again, we go back to the idea that a lot of these organizations are also receiving lots of taxpayer money to do various activities. In terms of the Catholic organizations, many of them run preschools, for example, or they run social service operations that are receiving taxpayer money. And yet at the same time, they're willing to go against federal law and harbor illegal individuals. And that is something that we need to have a reckoning with. Now, I also think it's interesting that there was just recently that IRS ruling that Trump was actually all in about, the Johnson Amendment, essentially saying that no, religious organizations do have the ability now to endorse political candidates. Well, we know that a number of religious organizations on the Muslim front, the Black evangelical front, they have always been willing to go all in and endorse particular political candidates. We'll see now, though, if the Catholic organizations that have always used this as a shield to stay away from politics, even when particular politicians are an affront to their catechism, we'll see now whether or not they actually will back their catechism with the right political figures.
Well, our dear friend, Father Frank Pavone, actually really was defrocked as a result of it. We'll see what happens with a Chicago and American Pope now in place, who seems to be more open to the idea of fighting for pro-life stances, because we know his story. Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI, all seem to be okay with that until the papacy of Pope Francis, God rest his soul. But then he defrocked the good Father Frank, which is so sad considering that these men devote their lives to something so big and so bold as to serve in the church. But we've seen it being from the Chicago area, being from Illinois with Reverend Jackson. He's always with the Rainbow Push Coalition, to his credit, always endorsing issues, always endorsing candidates, running many times himself, including for the presidency in 1984. Some story that really hit near and dear to my heart, my hometown of Glen Ellen, We saw that Sunset Pool got raided by a bunch of teenagers breaking the law, smoking weed, drinking alcohol. I almost chuckle in a sense of, yes, it's mischief, but then there was criminality in it. They actually broke into the pool and then pushed the managers into the pool. So they're actually harming the process of people doing work on a daily basis. On top of, I'm sure, families just trying to enjoy the summertime holidays, especially around the 4th of July. But all of this is shared on social media. So the police can actually see sometimes ahead of time, but then I'm listening to people on local Chicago channels actually saying that, well, we really can't do much in enforcing the law here. Why is that not the case, Jeannie?
Well, that means that they don't want to do that. They don't want to enforce the law. And so now I think they're going to be much more strict on the fact that you actually have to have a physical pass from the park district in order to enter the pool. It doesn't mean that if you're not a resident that you can't use it. It's just that you have to go through more of a strategic or a strict guideline to get in. And I think that's appropriate. Now, this was a targeted teen takeover. This is something that did go out on social media. Initially, they were going to go to apparently Naperville, but the cops caught wind of it. And so they redirected them and went to Sunset Pool in Glen Ellen. Glen Ellen, I mean, population less than 30,000. It's a very small community. The idea that they were targeted by Chicago teens to come out and do a pool takeover and then bring all of their activity that goes along with that is just, I thought it was an affront to decency. And I think that the Glen Ellen folks, who, by the way, I'm sorry, but your hometown has turned woke, and it's a little bit of a joke that way. I mean, they do have the signs, Glen Ellen is for everyone. Apparently, it's not for everyone because these teens got escorted right out, and they should have. And I think that there's been at least one arrest. Quite possibly there should have been hundreds. I saw video of literally teenage girls shaking their butts outside, out a window, and spitting on passerbys as they drove out of town.
And you really break down so many of these great stories on The Real Story with Jeannie Ives every Sunday night, and also with Breakthrough Ideas, where you really dive into public policy. And for the viewers who might not know, you've been in the room where it happens as an Illinois state rep, also running for Congress and governor of Illinois. So you've been in the middle of those large policy fights. Let's talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill. This is a large bill. It seems right now to have split President Trump and Elon Musk. We don't know if that's somewhat of a shadow game, but we have a situation where Elon might start a third party, the American Party, as he's aptly named it. But let's talk about what's good about the signing of this bill, now law, that was on the 4th of July, and maybe some of the things we can improve on in the future.
Well, I mean, there's really so many things that are good. One, I do like the fact, especially as a mother of 3 active duty service members, I do like the fact that they are plussing up our military, and hopefully that is for hardware, because we need a lot more hardware. We need new ships, we need new planes. I mean, the plane that my son currently flies in is getting mothballed after this deployment. It's 60 years old. The Nimitz is set to also get mothballed after this as well. It's 50 years old. So we do need to increase the amount of naval forces that we have and modernize everything else. So we do need to spend money that way. That's a good thing that they do. The second really good thing that they do is they are offering school choice to families to get out of government-run schools. And this is really great. We need competition in this space. And only if you're able to provide the monies to allow for that competition to come to bear, are you ever going to get this? And unfortunately, though, part of that caveat is that the states have to adopt it. So will blue state Illinois, that just got rid of its Invest in Kids scholarship, will it come back and adopt these federal funds that can come in and help give kids in poor neighborhoods a fighting chance to get a good education? I don't know, because our legislature has moved even more progressive, if that's even possible, but it has. Another great thing, this is going to force the states to become more responsible with their Medicaid funding. Illinois is out of control. We have spent well over $1 billion on illegal migrants to begin with, not to mention we expanded Obamacare. So, the federal government taxpayers are paying for the 90% of the Medicaid costs for the expansion population. That needs to get reined in. We need to give people jobs and get them off of Medicaid.
And with a congressional act, with another bill that comes through, perhaps it could be rescissions that are done. Do you see that coming through the form of reconciliation, as the initial One Big Beautiful Bill did just that with that very narrow majority when it was first passed out of the House, 215 to 214?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited about them doing some more spending cuts in the future. Now, Illinois just put together its largest budget in the history of Illinois general revenue budgets. And what people need to understand that when you're spending the largest amount you've ever spent, guess what that means? You also are taxing your people at the largest amount they've ever been taxed at. And so the idea that the federal government is going to lead on this issue, look at ways to cut government funding, look at ways for efficiency. That's that's the policy Illinois needs to adopt. Maybe we'll learn our lessons. And I'm also really hopeful that this green energy scam goes away. Of course, J.B. Pritzker has weighed completely into this. And now we just had a memo this week come out from the Illinois Manufacturers Association, the chemical manufacturers as well as Local 150, a private union, come out and say, look, if you don't get control of our energy policy in the state of Illinois and stop the idea that you're going to run a modern economy on wind and solar, you're going to see $1 trillion being wasted as we try to run our economy on wind and solar. It's not going to happen. So they are absolutely finally waking up to the fact that we need to stop these Governor Pritzker's ideas that Illinois is going to go full renewable energy. It's not. It absolutely is not. We need more nuclear, but we need more natural gas and coal as the transition energies to the future. It's not wind and solar, it's natural gas and coal, and that's what the transition into a nuclear future.
Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker going for a third term, somewhat unprecedented in the state of Illinois, because we like to joke around that these governors, they serve one term in office, one term in prison, but at least half of the last dozen or so having done just that. So who is the person that can take on the wealthiest politician in the country, someone who's had such inherited wealth, as President Trump has said, comes from a great family? The Pritzkers have done a lot for Illinois, but there's one bad apple that was on the tree. It's JB, who inherited all this wealth from the hospitality industry and hotels, but seemingly never really had a job of his own in the private sector, and we've seen it with his woke policies. Is there someone in Republican ranks, and is that person perhaps Jeannie Ives, that can take on someone like a Governor J.B. Pritzker?
Well, I mean, I appreciate your endorsement here to some degree. I do not plan on running for governor at this point. There's the person who I'm hoping runs is not in the race yet. We'll see if he gets in. Of course, it's a matter of putting together the manpower and the money. I think the messaging, this particular person has it hands down good. I'm not going to jump on any announcement from him or not, but I mean, we have a lot of good alternatives. It's just the person that I think would be best suited to take on J.B. Pritzker is not in the race yet. We will get there. The Republicans will put up a formidable challenge. And in fact, I think if you put up Oscar the Grouch, you could beat J.B. Pritzker because his policies have been so detrimental to Illinoisans. Was still the highest tax state for state and local taxes, really low on the job markets. Any industry that he's brought into Illinois, it's because he's subsidized them massively, from the Chinese Communist-backed company Goshen to Rivian, who is, applauding themselves for getting another $1 billion out of Volkswagen. But we'll see if they end up the year profitable. I doubt it. So, I mean, he's just propped up one unprofitable business after another, or a green energy scam. And that's not the way of the future for Illinoisans.
And you have 25 years, really, people voting also with their feet, moving away from the prairie states, losing around 7 congressional districts over that period of time. So population draining in the area. Let's shift focus back to Washington, D.C. and what's really big in the MAGA populist movement. Even some Democrats I've spoken with really attracted to the justice aspect of what's been brought to MAGA. We see now that there are DOJ investigations underway of Jim Comey and Mr. Brennan as well, regarding what might just be the missing link in all of this. Where was Barack Obama, not only on the Benghazi strikes, but also on Crossfire Hurricane, on the Russia hoax, as it's otherwise known, and these meetings that we know took place in the Oval Office towards the end of his term? Of course, AutoPen was in there during his vice presidency. But what exactly was decided? And will Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kash Patel at FBI, also his deputy Dan Bongino, be able to really dive into all of this? because it seems to tie into this whole web of lies regarding the situation with Jeffrey Epstein and what may come of truly liberty and justice in America. Do you have a take on really what's happened over the course of the last few days and what seemed to be, a major discussion within the ranks of Make America Great Again?
Well, all roads to every investigation that you discussed really leads back to Obama. And Obama learned all of his dirty tricks on how to win politically here in the state of Illinois. And he learned from the best, like Mike Madigan, who controlled the state legislature for over 36 years. So he's learned how to play dirty, and I have no doubt that Obama is at the center of all of this. And he and his friends put it together. They ran the Biden administration. I have no doubt about that. As far as the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, I think that we need a lot more questions answered by this administration, because they came out with some very bold statements about having a list, about having video, and we've seen nothing yet that would give us assurances that that they've answered our questions correctly. So I think that we need to know more, and they need to come clean, because it could be to Trump's detriment if they don't give us more answers to that. But no doubt about it. Look, Obama is at the center of the Russian collusion. He was at the center of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. It's all of his people that he put in place to try and thwart Trump's first administration, and then actually controlled Biden. I mean, this is outrageous, and I hope they dig deep and deep and deeper, and I hope people go to jail over it. I think it's treasonous myself.
Seems to be, as the days go on, the weeks go on, the months go on, and I go back to the late President Jimmy Carter, may God rest his soul, but a much different Democrat Party of the 1970s and even early 80s. But I just wonder what President Trump and former President Barack Obama could have been discussing in that moment. It's a very interesting thing, as I'm sure we'll find out more and more. And Jeannie, before we part ways on this beautiful evening, tell us about 2026, what you see for the midterms. President Trump will not be on the ballot. We know how he's drawn out votes and supporters over the course of over a decade now. What will be the messaging for not only incumbent Republicans, but those who might have been inspired because of this citizen movement and uprising, this populism that's been about serving the middle class and serving neighbors? And how will they be successful given the fact that President Trump draws out so much support, but he won't be at the top of the ballot?
No, he won't, but his policies will certainly be at the top of the ballot. And I think the Republicans are going to have a very good year in 2026. I think people are continuing to wake up to the policy choices that the Democrats made, especially in states like Illinois, where you can see the contrast clearly. But I think Republicans have to have a very, very strong messaging operation to make sure that the very last person hears that message. And then we have to have a really great political operation to pull out all those votes we possibly can. Because what we do know is that when Trump isn't at the top of the ballot, we have a drop off in people who participate in elections. And that's a problem. If you're MAGA, MAGA means you show up and vote in every election, whether it's an off-year election or a midterm. You need to show up and vote. And so we've got our work cut out for us as Republicans to make that happen, because they have natural operations on the Democrat side. They use their union forces to make that happen. And we don't nearly have that same sort of procedure in place.
Please share with our viewers where we can find you on Sunday nights, The Real Story with Jeannie Ives.
Great. Yeah, we cover a lot of different political things, a lot of Illinois stuff, but we also hit the national with our own local experts. And so you can find me on AM 560 WIND Chicago on Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. on The Real Story with Jeannie Ives.
Jeannie Ives from the great state, the prairie state of Illinois. Thank you so much for joining us on The Voice of Reason, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you to Jeannie Ives for breaking down all of the crucial issues from this week and issues that will face us for a while now in the United States of America. And now to a very special interview with a dear friend of mine, Barry Morgenstein, America's photographer. We have the Artist series we're rolling out here on The Voice of Reason, and he'll talk about his career and what it's like to be a photographer for everyone in the Big Apple. Joining us now on The Voice of Reason, America's photographer, Barry Morgenstein. Welcome to the show, and tell us about your career and the amazing photos you take on a regular basis. And with all transparency, I got my headshots you could see on my social media. That's the work of none other than Barry Morgenstein. So a pleasure to have you on the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you finally. Good to be here.
And let's start with, talk about the background there of just where you are in your home studio. Some iconic photos there that just show your love for this country and the military service. I believe your family, a generational effort in defending this great nation of ours.
Yes, well, absolutely. Yeah, obviously, those are not photos that I've taken, but these are, as you know, I'm a big history and buff and a love of our country, a love of our military. And yeah, I guess behind me I have Major Dick Winters. Probably everybody knows from the Band of Brothers series, and he became a big hero of mine. I've read like 3 or 4 books on him. Found that autographed copy on eBay, which I hope it's real. But anyway, it's pretty cool. Next to him is I've always been fascinated by the Fighting Sullivan brothers, which everybody knows during World War II. Their story, the 5 brothers who were lost at sea in the Solomon Islands on the same ship. USS Juno went down, and the 5 brothers were together. They insisted on serving together, and unfortunately, they all perished together. So it was ever since then that siblings were not allowed to serve on the same ship in the Navy. So yeah, it's a great movie made about them, and I've always been fascinated by their story. I love World War II history and that time period in our country. So Greatest Generation. So yeah. Yeah, that explains that, and of course my Iwo Jima statue right here too. So I love American history, and I love the military. So.
How has that influence of American history and the military really, I guess, affected your work, your career? Because you capture moments for people that are very literally a time tested, if you will. It's literally an image in a moment, really grabbing someone's not only their personality, but also what they're trying to showcase in their line of work. And so how did those things really inspire your work?
Well, you know, as you probably know, I started off as a rock and roll photographer, and I started photographing actors, which I still do some actors, but I kind of, my reputation now has been known. I'm the Patriot, the go-to guy for the Patriots. So you know, again, loving our Patriots, loving a conservative comment media. A lot of them come to me, and since I guess they're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them, I think I just know how to capture them. Just, you know, we just have a lot of mutual interest in loving the country and appreciating good things about the country. So yeah, that seems like my go-to now. I just get a lot. I mean, I still photograph a lot of different people, wide variety of actors, attorneys, real estate people, doctors, you know, musicians. But you know, it seems to be that I've just kind of created this thing where conservatives feel good coming to me, especially in New York City. I'm a kind of a rarity in New York, being the one conservative photographer in New York City. So I guess they know where to go, yeah, and they feel safe, comfortable.
Speak to us about that too, because we see so many artists they tend to be left of center, and I think now it's thankfully for President Trump, for the MAGA movement. Many of us artists, I started my career as an actor, as you know. It's a lot. We could be more out and about it, because I'm sure over your career it wasn't like you were hitting pots and pans saying, "Hey, I believe in these things." It just was part of your life, and you still respected the other side because you were likely working with other people that had differing viewpoints, as I experienced over the course of my career. So how do you think it's for these conservative artists to now, in a sense, come out of the closet and not be afraid of actually being able to represent their values while still being able to work and not be canceled?
Well, yeah, definitely. As you said, now I think they do feel more comfortable. In my case, I have to say, maybe I wasn't too smart, or maybe I just had a big mouth, but I was always rattling those pots and pans, giving my opinions, even when it was unpopular or uncool to do such a thing. And yes, I had been canceled, but I was always shouting. It didn't stop me. I'm sure it affected my business. I'm sure I lost clients, but I was always proud to say, hey, I just love this country, and I love law enforcement. I love the military, and you know, if somebody wants to cancel me for that, then you know, I guess what can I do about that? You know, that's just that's who I am, and I'm proud of my opinions. But yeah, like you said, I think now I think people are feeling more comfortable. So yeah, good for them. You know, because I know people that have been canceled and had troubles from the left, and I know I certainly have. So to this day, I still do. I still get canceled when people find out I'm a Trump supporter or patriot. So, but again, I'm not gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm gonna always say I'm proud of who I am and what I believe. So
Well,
that's that.
I admire it so deeply because, we've seen where the only way that evil can really thrive in this world is if good men stay silent. And I think that one of the biggest issues highlighting that right now is what's happened to our dear Jewish community abroad from October 7th of 2023 to right here in the United States, whether it be Columbia or Harvard, these pristine academic institutions, I mean, really hallowed ground in the American movement of liberal education and liberal arts, the purest form of it, believing in freedom of speech and updating it from not only the 17th century when some of these places started opening their doors, but look at Berkeley. That was the center of the free speech movement way back in the 60s. Right. And now you have all this anti-Semitism happening. So how would you encourage those to remain strong regardless of what they're doing, whether they're artists or in their line of work, to make sure that their neighbors are not being discriminated against, and you're not seeing this perpetual racism that's been against the Jewish people for countless generations?
Well, as this Sunday is the anniversary of Butler, Pennsylvania, and as President Trump said, fight, fight, fight. Everybody's got to fight back against this. Got to fight back against anti-Semitism, against anti-Americanism. We can't have these terrorists on our campuses, which is what they are. They're terrorist sympathizers. If they're supporting Hamas and they're going against the good guys, Israel. I'm also outspoken about my support of Israel too. Always America first, but I support our greatest ally, and we work together. It's our best friend, and you always have to support good versus evil, and they just can't get away. I don't know how they've gotten away with it this far, and people shouldn't be afraid to go to school. You go back, and I wish I was a student. I always say, I wish I was on the campus. I wish one of these clowns would try to fight me if I'm wearing my IDF T-shirt or whatever, or a Star of David, whatever. Let them go at it, and we just need to fight back. They just can't. This is America. We can't let this never, like you said, in the '60s, Berkeley, yeah, they were liberal, but as my friend Chris Plant says, he said they're not liberal anymore. They're the left.
Right.
There's a big difference. So they're Marxists. They're Marxists, and they're pro Hamas, pro Islamic terrorists. This is America. We can't stand for that. So I just say fight. Don't be afraid to speak out against these clowns.
Well, as we say on the Voice of Reason too, it's people who are apolitical might just see Republican and Democrat, but it's more of a 4 or 5 way paradigm with the far left, the globalists, that sadly seemingly have taken over the current modern Democrat Party. But you have the Uniparty set up, the League of Shadows, whatever you want to call them. It's the neocon, neoliberal agenda of Washington, D.C., and those working as the Uniparty against We the People, MAGA, the populist movement that really is the heartbeat of America, middle class. And I can't tell you how many Democrat friends of mine are like, wow, I didn't believe in anything that the former vice president talked about in 2024, so I had to vote for President Trump as a result. So it's nice to break bread there. And I'm just so excited to have you on for our artist series here on the Voice of Reason, because you have an upcoming book, a coffee table book, coming out this October, and it's really showcasing all of your work, and it's rock and soul. So you're going back to the beginnings of your career and some of the really amazing photos you took of some iconic Americans.
Yeah, I'm excited. People have been, at the beginning of my career, like I said, I was a rock and roll photographer. I would be hired by record companies, magazines, go to Madison Square Garden and shoot concerts. And so I've accumulated quite a library of slides and negatives, which I've been scanning to digital recently for the book. People have been after me for years, say, you got to do a book, you got to do a book. And I'm like, nah, nobody cares about my book. It's like, but finally people talked me into it. My wife has been very supportive, and I'm with Ballast Books, who's actually a great publishing company. They do a lot of patriots, actually. They're known for doing a lot of patriotic military people too, heroes. So I'm happy to be with them. The book is coming out. I'm really excited. It's called Rock and Soul: Portraits by Barry Morgenstein. So it's a nice history of a lot of my music, and I call it rock and soul. I was thinking calling it rock and roll. That's my first love, but there's so much type of music involved in it. There's like rock and obviously soul music. There's like a lot of R&B. There's blues. There's I have jazz artists, reggae, pop artists too. So hopefully, it's actually they're doing pre-sales now on their website in Dallas, but it's officially out in October. So yeah, we're pretty excited and really looking forward to it.
I can't wait to have it
Just
on.
as my wife says, having my legacy, in a book so people can really see it. So.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And your beautiful wife, Shelley, such a great support when you go out there and do the headshots, because I've experienced it. It's literally a party. And some people, they go so nervous into their headshots, like it's life or death. But you make it such an enjoyable environment with you and yours. So break down kind of your, not only your passion for it, but really your philosophy behind headshots and how you try to capture these important moments that could be really a make or break for people's careers, or even just finding that special time in their lives where they can look back and say, wow, Barry Morgenstein caught what I was trying to emulate in the brilliance of a photo, so I can have this lasting impression on generations to come.
Yeah, I guess I think people feel comfortable with me because we like to make it a laid back atmosphere. As you know, we have music playing. We have my great team, which I couldn't do without my team, my makeup artist, my assistants, whoever is helping me out. It's just, we just have a great time. I've always heard of people's experience going to photographers and they say, well, photographer wasn't that friendly, had an attitude. I was like, you're a photographer. You don't need to have an attitude. Just be. You're supposed to make the client feel comfortable. And we just, like you said, we have a good time. And I think that's it. And when we talk to clients, and and just talk about whether they're actors. I'll ask about their career, who's their favorite actor, who's their favorite, what's their favorite movie. I love old classic movies, so I'm very interested in that too. And if they're patriots or whatever, we have a lot to talk about. So I think it's just more just about having a good time, like you said, and just hanging out. We just hang out, get them, when they're getting ready in the makeup chair. My makeup artists are great. They're talking to them. They get ready for me, and then by the time they get in my chair, I think they're pretty relaxed and we just have a good time.
Approachable and friendly. There's no question about it. Worked with many photographers over my career, and you have been the top notch. There's no question about it, because you do feel that right away. So I give my total and complete endorsement, as President Trump would say, among other candidates that are out there, especially with the midterms coming up. But what I also like is you bring a humble and modest nature to it. And I'm actually looking right now at just some iconic photos you've taken. Megyn Kelly, for example, beautiful and smart as always. The one you took of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and President Trump, that's really iconic. Can you tell us the background on that story? Because I believe that was from the first term.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I guess the photo I'm most proud of. Proud of a lot of my photos, but that one, if I had to pick one favorite, that may be it, because it's two of my heroes. To me, like great Churchill type leaders in the world. I was called. This was actually 6 months before the 2016 election, and I got a call from one of Trump's attorneys, or I think it was even a Facebook message, say, "Hey, can you come to Trump Tower tomorrow?" I think it was a Saturday, and it said Sunday morning at 7 a.m. We need a photo. I have a very special guest coming to meet Donald Trump at the time before he was president. And I'm saying, yeah, I'll be there. I'll get up early for that. But we didn't know who it was, and they didn't even know who it was. So it was literally, so I show up to Trump Tower, and it was in the residence, and we're waiting. And finally, it was maybe 5 minutes before he arrived, and they said, "Oh, it's going to be Benjamin Netanyahu." And I was like, so I'm trying to contain my composure. I'm like, oh, that's great. So it's like, and they said, basically, you think it's going to be the first official meeting. And I had 5 minutes, maybe even less. They're going to have a meeting to start shooting. You have 5 minutes to capture it. So I snapped away. I think it was even 2 minutes. It seemed so quick. So I just snapped away, and I was lucky enough to just capture that. I think it's kind of a historic image because it was their first image, first meeting. And I just think it's a great shot of them capture in an intense moment discussing. I don't know. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but just to be there was amazing. And I'm lucky I captured that. So.
Truly life captured in a moment with two extraordinary leaders. And I like how you put it, Barry, Churchillian, if you will. Very much like the leadership of the great UK Prime Minister from World War II. And then as I go through even more, not only great news anchors, but great war heroes and modern warriors, including Chris Tanto Paronto. Really, I think that the image, it's almost a Rembrandt image of just showing his grit, his masculinity, his bravery. a fun story I told you off air that I was going to share. Back in 2016, I'm at a wedding of a friend of mine who was literally a real life Top Gun, who went more of the intelligence direction as a naval pilot. And I still have not seen him since that wedding in 2016. He technically, it's not even worth sharing his name because he doesn't exist. He actually told us, brought the groomsmen together and just said, you guys won't see me. I met the love of my life in the Navy, and we're going to lay low for a while, just per the American government. I'm like, oh my gosh, well, what can we do? Well, just keep saying prayers and I will find you. And I've tried with different cell phones to addresses. Everything gets returned, and I miss my friend. So if he is watching, I miss you, buddy. Let's come back together. But I bring this up because we're in Katy, Texas, really a small town outside of Houston, about 45 miles, but home of Renee Zellweger and some other big names that have shaped American culture. Well, I'm in the gym working out, and that's why I tell everyone, when you're on the road, go into the gym, because none other than Chris Tanto Peranto is in there while doing tours of the college campuses, telling the story of Benghazi, and I couldn't believe it. And I'll send you the selfie at some point today, just to show you what we did, because we're both like, it's just like hot and sweaty, just 2-hour workouts. I'm like, I know that voice. And I look behind me, I'm like, my God, it's Tanto. So, I mean, what a great guy, very relatable. And in that moment, it was before my time in the media, just asked him, tell me what happened. And not to speak for the gentleman, but he said a certain administration did not want them to get out of Benghazi. And it really made me open my eyes and ears. So that photo was just very captivating.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, he was, well, as you probably know, and I always find heroes like that, they're always the most humble. That's that's why I love, I always call him a hero, which he doesn't like to be called that, but I always say, well, it's too bad you're a hero.
Exactly.
So, but they're just so humble. It's like, and he's the nicest guy, funny, and my first photo shoot I did with him was with the 3 Benghazi guys. Before that, when they were, I think the book was about to come out. The film hadn't come out yet. It was the book. So I did a publicity photo of the 3 of them, became instant friends with all of them, but became very close with Chris, and we've just been in touch ever since. And just honored to have clients and good friends like that. So yeah, but I appreciate the comments on the photo. So yeah,
And with the, to kind of segue a bit as well, lifelong New Yorker, it's the Big Apple. It's such a beautiful city to visit. I love visiting New York City on a regular basis. The last time, the Madison Square Garden, where you have taken pictures of some of the best and brightest stars over the course of your career, but a really interesting mayoral race. Would love your take on that and what you see in the future, because we've had quasi-socialists, we've had socialists, but to have this outright communist who wants to take over markets that are actually very cost-effective for people to eat and get their groceries from, especially in New York City, he wants government to take over everything. And it seems to be just mind-boggling as we go into this brave new era of people who want to attack the MAGA populist agenda. Well,
yeah, those of us who, he's a communist / Islamist. So he's pro-Hamas, which is even worse. That's as bad as you can get. That shouldn't be happening in America. It's like so those of us who have a business in New York, we're very, very concerned about it, and I'm doing anything I can to not have him not get elected. I'm pushing for Curtis Lewa myself. So I think he's the only way that we can save the city. But this guy is bad news. He's scary. But the fact that he won the primary, that's just, again, almost 25 years after 9/11. And this is who we may be putting in the office of mayor of New York City, the guy who's clearly a Jew hater, supports Hamas, and a communist.
And especially after
you can't make it up.
Right. So
it's like out of a movie.
Oh, it really is. So soon after the legacy of the great America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani. So we'll stay on that race here at Right Side Broadcasting Network and the Voice of Reason. Barry, where can we find all of your work? Where can people sign up to get your great headshots? And you travel as well, because I got my headshots all the way down in the free Sunshine State of Florida.
Yes.
And that was a fun time with you and so many great people that day.
Thank you. Well, yeah, maybe I'll be in Jupiter full time if this guy gets elected. But yeah, so I travel. Yeah, I traveled. That was the first time in Jupiter. I like to go back and do that. I travel to the D.C., Virginia area for a weekend of headshots twice a year. I'll be there, Alexandria, 23rd, 24th, August 23rd, 24th. Sorry, for a weekend of headshots. So we go there. I travel. Nashville, I used to go. I'm trying to get back there. My studio's in New York City. I'm there all the time. You can just Google my name. I'm easy to find. I'm on social media. I have a big presence on Facebook, Instagram, always posting my photos. My website's barrymorgenstein.com. Yeah, and if they want to check out the rock and roll book, it's on Ballast Books website too. Again, not official till October, but it's pre-sales. So yeah, I'm easy to find. Just Google my name.
America's photographer, Barry Morgenstein. Thank you for joining us on The Voice of Reason for our Artist Series.
Thank you, my friend.
And I hope to see you in the near future.
I look forward to it. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you to Barry for all of that interesting insight. He's recorded, taken photographs of great rock stars to politicians. And let me tell you, I took my headshots recently with him, and it's a delight to be with him and his team. So again, thank you to Barry Morgenstein for joining The Voice of Reason in our debut artist series. We'll bring more of them to you over the course of the next few weeks. A new segment, This Day in History, July 10th of 1509. John Calvin, the French theologian, he was born way back when and passed on May 27th of 1564 at the age of 54 in Geneva, Switzerland. And it's actually fun because his name comes up a lot in a Bible study I'm actually involved with, where there's a big discussion on different points of Calvinism. Actually kind of fascinating to dive on into, especially if you're going through any catechism study. So someone who is definitely worth the research and worth the discussion, especially if you're getting into biblical, theological discussions with family and friends, which is always appropriate around the dinner table, but as long as it's done with respect. That's the one thing about the education system, especially when I went through it myself. It was always, what's up with you, Bobby? You love politics, you love religion. These are the two things that insult people. Well, why? Just have a nice discussion with people and don't scream at them, don't swear at them. Just have a discussion like normal human beings. And I think we're getting back to that in the golden era, but I'd love to hear what you have to say regarding that. Also, on this day in 1991, Boris Yeltsin, a Russian politician, sworn into office as the country's first elected president. This is post the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Cold War. And we know now that some would like to continue their Russia hoax, their deep state neocon, neoliberal agenda in order to bring down the United States and get us into endless wars. But we know we fortunately have an administration that is pushing peace through strength and will not tolerate that kind of behavior on the world stage. And that's what we pray for here at the Voice of Reason, peace above all else. And of course, you can't end the Voice of Reason without this week's winners and losers. And the winners have to be those first responders. Every day putting on that uniform, you truly don't know if you will come home to your loved ones. And we've seen that again in Texas, as our thoughts and prayers are with the Lone Star State as President Trump travels to visit with leaders on the ground, Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the Senators John Cornyn, Ted Cruz, among countless others who have been on the ground, who have been doing press conferences, who I know are exhausted. Our thoughts and prayers with all of you and all of the family members who lost loved ones this week at a time you would not expect to. In the height of summer, the beauty of summer, the beauty of a Christian camp like Camp Mystic. So all of the Coast Guard and state and local officials who have gone into those waters in order to save lives or recover those bodies, God be with you. And we are with you as a nation, whatever you do need. The losers of the week have to be the big government, far left globalists, especially the Massachusetts legislature. In case you missed it, they want to take masks off of the ICE agents in order to reveal them, in order to put them in danger. But this is what's interesting about the Massachusetts legislature, because many of them were there when they forced the Commonwealth to mask up, and now proven non-scientific solutions to COVID, like 6 feet apart, like the isolation, like not going to church, not going to the gym. They want you to wear a mask for that, but they don't want law enforcement to wear a mask in order to protect themselves against foreign terrorist organizations like MS-13, like Tren de Aragua. I mean, give me a break. And that's on top of the ultimate loser of losers, Dr. Fear. Where is Anthony Fauci? It's something that's been on my mind. I've been talking to viewers, friends, and family about this as well. Where is that warmonger, that bloodlust-loving so-called doctor who enjoys snipping the vocal cords of beagles and creating creepy science experiments in order to push his extreme globalist agenda? Where is he exactly? Because I'm tired of hearing about sudden cardiac heart events. Just the sudden death syndrome that takes place throughout this country. I've had too many friends or family friends, or it's hit home too much now, where it just doesn't seem to line up. How these healthy people in their early 30s somehow are experiencing all this after the mandates. So we have to find him. We have to figure out where exactly he is and peacefully and patriotically bring perpetrators to justice and know exactly what their agenda was, what they knew when, especially when it comes to this gain-of-function research and the tax dollars you used in order to fund all of it and their sick, psychotic experiments. That's why we exist here as a free speech network, as a free speech show, in order to be the voice of the voiceless. So we hope you join next week, The Voice of Reason, every Thursday night at 6 o'clock. God be with you, and God be with yours, and good night from the Voice of Reason.